You have a lot of good proposals. You have a vision as to what you would want our courts to deliver to the underprivileged. But how will you get, if you are appointed Chief Justice, how will you get the present members of the Supreme Court who are more senior in age and who have more judicial experience to support your proposals?
I don't think any amount of talking to them or convincing them will do it. It will only have to be by example. That's the only way that I know how to lead.
And by that you mean?
I mean that I will not ask anything of the other members of the court that I will not willingly do myself.
Thank you. That was my last question. Good luck, Dean.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice.
Attorney Mejia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Dean Diokno.
Good afternoon, sir.
As Attorney Cayos pointed out earlier, this is not the first time that you're going through this process, as in fact, we interviewed you more than a year ago.
Yes.
If you will be appointed as Chief Justice, you know that you will be the ex officio chair of the Judicial and Bar Council.
Yes, sir.
And having seen the process of vetting candidates like you to the position, what reforms, if any, would you introduce in the process of vetting candidates for the position?
I'm very happy to hear that question because I do have a lot of concerns about the process of appointment of judges. And I don't mean to refer to the Judicial and Bar Council itself, but rather to the system of appointment. I understand that in other countries they have made it less politicized by giving some of the power to the citizenry. Not all members of the Judicial and Bar Councils in some other countries are appointed by the President or members or considered public officers. Perhaps that would be one way of democratizing the process. I see, for example, in front of me, I believe all the members of the council are members of the bar. But being appointed a judge is something that all Filipinos citizens have a concern with. And I think that other sectors in society also have an equal interest in terms of deciding who should get into the short list. So I would like to see a greater participation, not only from within the bar itself, but from the other sectors of society.
Coming from the academe, Dean, how do you intend to continue regulating the law schools? Will you also introduce any reform in the manner by which law schools are regulated?
Well, that, as I understand it, is now primarily the function of the Legal Education Board. But insofar as my position, if ever I'm appointed as Chief Justice, I would like to see, for one thing, legal aid made a requirement, perhaps, or at least highly encouraged among law students. Sa medical profession po, when you become a doctor, you have, I think, as up to now, you're still required to render community service. Perhaps something like that will help, because a lot of the problems, especially of the poor, could readily be resolved even by a new lawyer. All they need is access to counsel. Unfortunately, in our country, it's very hard for many of our brothers and sisters to get that access.
Talking about free legal aid, and given your background as a flag lawyer, do you think poor and indigent litigants are properly represented in our courts of law today?
There's a lot to be desired as far as that goes. I really feel for the PAO lawyers because when I go to court and I see them, talagang punong-puno po sila ng kaso. Many of them have a difficult time, not because they're incompetent, but no, it's because they just have too much work and they can't do it. We don't have, unfortunately, a system here, a local system of appointment of the official counsel that is as active as in other jurisdictions that I've seen. In many other places, they have a role of attorneys in every local court where when they need the official counsel, kung walang power, if it's an important case, they can appoint from that. And I think those kinds of systems should be revived.
What, to your mind, are the key hindrances to the efficient and speedy disposition of cases, Dean Diokno?
You're referring, sir, to the criminal cases, pre-sentence disposition?
All cases, for that matter.
Well, for one thing, I think that we have been applying rules of court and rules of evidence that were designed for a different system. We apply our rules of evidence. We lifted that from the Code of California. Our rules of court are mainly copied from the federal rules of civil and criminal procedure. I have no problem with getting rules from other countries, but the problem is, ang Amerika po is a jury system where they have to have very strict rules because the judge and the jury are separate persons. The judge is the one who screens the evidence so that the jury will not hear it. But in our jurisdiction, the judge and the jury is just one person. The judge actually hears inadmissible evidence. It is now up to him, because of his training, to be able to screen that out in order not to make it influence his decision. So I don't think many of the rules that we have really, which were designed for a jury, can be streamlined so that we can apply it to a bench jury system that we have here.
For my final question, in your opinion, did the impeachment of the former Chief Justice infringe on judicial independence? Why and why? Why or why not?
No, I don't think so. And I think that the impeachment of the Chief Justice gave the people a number of lessons. The first lesson, I think, is that the people are also looking for transparency, not only in the executive and the legislature, but also as well in the judicial branch. And one of the issues, of course, there has to do with the statement of assets and liabilities of the Chief Justice. I would like to see a more transparent judiciary, both in respect to the SAL-N rules as well as in respect to its use of funds.
As I said, that's my final question. Good luck, Dean Diokno. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Justice Lagman?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Dean Diokno, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, po.
You stated a while ago in answer to the question of Attorney Mejia about the effect of the impeachment of the former Chief Justice. Now, considering the negative effect of that impeachment, in your opinion, what kind of a Chief Justice do we need today?
To me, thank you, Po, for that question. To me, the biggest problem facing the judiciary is the people's loss of faith in the system. I wouldn't even use the word public confidence, because for me, it's even deeper than that. Karamihan po ng mga kapatid natin hindi na po naniniwala sa husgado. And it's really unfortunate, but that will have to be the very first priority of the next Chief Justice. How could he address that? Well, if ever I am appointed, I would address it with a 4-point program. First, I would call for more judicial transparency. Second, I would call for more public accountability. Third, I would call for no more flip-flopping of decisions that are final in nature. And fourth, I would call for faster and cheaper justice. If I may explain each of these 4 points, Your Honors.
Yes.
First, I think, as I said earlier, the people, to restore the people's faith in the judiciary, we must show them that the judiciary is transparent. And transparency can only be reflected in 2 ways, in terms of access of the public to the statement of assets and liabilities, and in terms of the use of public funds.
Yes.
And I think the Chief Justice will have to take the role, the lead, as far as those 2 matters are concerned. As far as public accountability is concerned, I have this very, very serious issue. Up to now, Your Honors, please, our courts have no central monitoring system to determine if a person convicted by final judgment, meaning already affirmed by the Supreme Court, is actually serving time in jail. We have no central record system to determine where, in fact, those people are. Now, how can we have a state of accountability if we cannot even tell how many of those convicted by final judgment are inside Muntinlupa? Okay. So to me, it's really very important that not only the courts but the Department of Justice and the Ombudsman realign their priority, not simply for conviction rates, but to determine whether those convicted are actually serving their sentences. I understand that there was a study made around 2007 or 2006, and it was submitted to the Ombudsman, where the study reported that out of 100 or so had been convicted of corruption-related offenses, only about 10 were actually in jail. Now, I do not know if that study is accurate, but if it is a very disturbing statistic. Second, I would call for the perpetuation, I would call for the review of the rules of court to allow for the perpetuation of whistleblowers' testimonies and other witnesses who are vulnerable. Ang karamihan po ng mga kaso natin, especially the